Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Effort Show with Alex
And Joe.
and Joe, man. Like, I'm so excited to sit down with you today. We
Oh
have
yeah.
a ton of ground to cover.
Oh yeah.
Um, if you'll indulge me, let me just do a little tease
Oh
here.
yeah. All of the indulgements.
Yeah. So, no major preamble. We're just going to dive into behind the screen here in a moment. We're going to talk about building priests. And
Mhm.
I have to tell you, like I thought this was going to be a simple exercise until I really started to dig in, and then I realized, like, whoa, like there's a lot. Did
Right?
you have a
There's
similar experience?
well, actually, I didn't because I have played a good handful of healers.
Hmm.
Priest is one of I wouldn't say favorite class, but it is one of my go-tos. I do like those support classes. And I have played a priest or two.
Hmm. Yeah.
Looking back at like both Hinar and Bulgur were both like solid into like the cleric healer type in a sense. Very different aspects, but they were both healers.
Absolutely. Well, and I would just say, you might have the most beloved healer in all of Runehammer history, way back on our days on Roll for Effort. You
Yeah,
had Hinar. I think you can still watch his episodes.
yeah,
Um,
I do believe they are still up and hiding there on Roll Forever,
yeah.
which is cool.
So Hinar is one of the most beloved priests ever. He is your council mage. Like Hinar is just epic, classic.
It
Um,
still blows my mind.
yep. So yeah, I mean there were like people like, hey, are you like you're the guy who voices Hinar, right? Like you were
You're
getting some of
Hinar.
that.
Yeah. I just real quick have to touch in. We did when the magic play tests were happening, for
Mhm.
the magic book. Bink back over here. Oh, I'm getting good at those points. But anyway, when we were doing the magic play test, we had split off. We had all those groups, that we were each kind of helping to coordinate with, and it ended up that I actually joined the group that was doing the play test there. What up, pilgrims? Woo! Um, and as soon as I came in, like everybody was, you're Hinar. I was like, shouldn't you guys all be like, like, Hankrin is sitting right there. Shouldn't you? Oh my gosh, you're Hankrin. What are you Hinaring me about? And then when I did the voice, you could see the ripple across everybody of like eyes light up. And I was like, oh my God. Like I was suddenly so freaking nervous because I'm like, wow, okay. There's kind of a lot to live up to accidentally because that campaign was epic. I loved that character.
Yeah, and
But it was just, it was wild to see, man. It kind of like blew
to
my mind a bit.
think I tried to kill you with a giant house and some tree trunks one time.
Right.
Oh,
Uh,
oh my god,
hey,
the fandom would have been so mad.
right. Well, Matt did kill me with that Gargaleth. And then everybody collectively said no,
Yep.
which was a first for me. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man,
And
sorry, I'm derailing us here.
yeah, and Hanker was just like, I'm diving into its mouth, and we were all like, what, you're gonna
Right,
do what? Yeah, exactly.
right.
Ah, good times.
Whew,
Whew.
epic times.
But so you have played very memorable ones. I would like to think I've had a couple. So when I
Hmm.
started thinking about this homework assignment over the week or so, I immediately went to Master Graz. I think it was a beloved sort of
Yes,
priest
yes,
type character,
yes. He was.
more in the monk vein, but we'll talk about that.
Yep,
And
one of the fangs of Kilvastri.
yep, and also one of my favorite ones, which is Vlas.
Yes,
Um, so Vlas and his
that's my neck frills.
uh huh right, my lizard
Twitching.
man healer, who had a very free form style of magic, and I can't wait to talk
Yeah,
about that too.
yeah.
Um, and then after we go behind the sheet, we're gonna go behind the screen, and
Hmm.
we so far we've been hitting several things already up until this point.
Yep.
We've talked about all the DM responsibilities.
Hmm.
We've talked about chunking things up into scenes. We've talked
Yep.
about putting players in peril.
Hmm.
All these sort of basic building
Yep.
blocks in terms of like
Using discrete spaces and
yep,
open spaces.
in terms of an
Hmm.
epic session, but we haven't built any encounters yet.
Yeah. It is the next logical step.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of dished out some pieces. Today we're gonna put them all together.
Yep.
We're gonna prep that first, not just that first encounter, but I think we're gonna prep like that first night of play.
We're
You
gonna do
know, to
three. We're gonna do three rooms,
mm-hmm.
three encounters to start your campaign. But one whole night of play. Yes.
Yep.
Um, I think we're dubbing it Tomb of the Skeleton King, maybe, or something like that.
That's that's what I have written down.
Yeah.
I think from like the brief. Now, mind you guys, we didn't set
Yep.
anything up. We said, okay, we're going to do these three spaces. And Alex wonderfully named them. We have the antechamber, we have the crumbling hallway, and that all leads into the tomb of the Skeleton King. So we're gonna have that coming up later on in this episode.
Yes. And then I want to talk about too, a hook. Maybe if you're going to run this, because it will be sort of a complete adventure you can run, maybe as a one shot, maybe as an
Mm-hmm.
intro to a campaign. Um, we'll talk about a hook or some hooks. We'll come up with some
Right?
ideas to get your players
Yep.
involved.
Oh yes.
So that's a lot. So we're not. Let's not even mess around anymore. Talking about pleasantries and such. Let's just jump right into it, Joe.
Oh yeah. Let's jump in behind the screen.
All right. So Joe, tell me, you had Hinar. You are Hinar. You did the voice of Hinar.
I stole the voice.
What are you
Right.
looking for in terms of like a classic priest? Excuse me, priest healer. What are you looking for?
Right. Well, I mean, going for the classics, you know, we can build straight out of the book. You know, it's as I've kind of been carrying on this side of our discussions, straight out of the book. Uh, this is a thing where I guess for your life form, you could definitely look for one that'll give you a bonus into that magic effort or some such. I know there's a couple, or you can just not even worry about what that type or that life form is going to be because that's kind of less. I mean, with a lot of the classes, you'll start to notice it's kind of less important what those are. It's more of the who you are building. Um, so right off the bat, I'm going to go for building a priest, classic priest. Starting ability, I'm taking healer
Yeah,
without question.
yeah,
Any healing magic does ultimate. I mean, it's kind of the namesake of the show, so of course we're going for that
yeah. Right out of the gate, folks.
right out of the gate.
Ultimate healing.
Yep, night one, ultimate healing. And then, to be honest, man, you know what? I've got to take that green staff because that just feels pretty dope when you get three whiz spells in the staff, and if the staff is lost, it comically turns up in 1d4 rounds.
Mm-hmm. What?
Pinar did not have that, but that's a great item for a classic priest.
Absolutely. And I gotta know, Joe. What are the three spells? What are your go tos?
Ooh, well, I mean, definitely one of them has got to be that healing touch,
Yeah, I agree. 1,000,000%.
right?
Healing
I mean,
touch out of the gate. And I would just say to folks too, Joe. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think initially sometimes when people are building healers, their first thought is, I want to jump straight to healing Nova and I want to heal
yep,
everybody with the flick of my pinky like Kung Fu Panda style. And it's just like, don't do that.
right. I was actually going to bring that up. That it's very tempting to take the one that just heals out everybody, and that does kind of feel a little cheaty.
Mm-hmm.
It's doable. You can totally do it.
Yep.
Just check with your GM, folks.
Check
But
with
I
your
would healing black or healing touch.
Well, and I'm just gonna, me, Joe. I have a certain dogma about things. I
Mhm.
just don't think that's very exciting. Like I think
Yeah.
players think they want that. Like, oh, I'll be able to keep the whole party healed, and the reality
Yep.
is, healing touch. It's personal. You have to put a
Mhm.
hand on a person. You have
Yeah.
that sort of intimate moment, which sparks some amazing RP right in
Mhm.
that
Yep.
moment. Like don't worry, you can
Right.
rest. You know,
Right. It's no time to rest, young one.
yeah,
Woo, healing
right,
touch.
exactly.
Back in the fight.
That sort of stuff. You don't have all that if you're just like snapping your fingers and suddenly everybody
Yeah, I'm
gets.
healing everybody to far. You'll find that on the player side, you will have a much less challenging time, which a lot of the time equates to less fun. Like
Yeah.
it's like you're building up to letting everybody look at their phones, and save healing over for later. You're really going to need it at those, once you start getting into like multiple sessions when you're in
Yeah.
deep in that campaign.
You're hitting the
Then it
water.
will feel
You're
tasty.
hitting the water slide in my campaign, as Hankerin I think said the other day. Like you're
Yes.
gonna need it then, but be a humble man of faith like Hanar, and
Yeah.
think about something simple like healing touch. Okay, I cut
All
you
right.
off. So that's number
No, no
one,
worries.
100% no question. What else?
All right. Number two, I'd go for that holy bulwark. So when it essentially gives them a magical heart that it's there until it's gone. It
Yes.
doesn't go away. It's not on a timer. The timer is how much damage you're taking. That's it. Like you
Yep.
can't heal it back. It's just an extra 10 hit points that you can kind of soak up, which is a great thing. Plunk that on your tank, send them out into the front, and then just hang back, waiting to see where you need to go to get that healing touch in, because you're going to have to be moving.
Yep.
And I think my other one, just for the fun, um, I mean, there's a couple, but in that sense of moving, I would probably look at quickness personally, because there are times when your tank just dropped all the way across the room. Your mage just got rocked by the enemy spellcaster, and he's all the way across the map. So you've got like a full far move in between the two. You're gonna need to get there fast, especially if those death timers drop in a little low.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna want that quickness to be able to move anywhere in the current location as if it was near, and you get that for 1d4 rounds on that spell.
Yeah, and not your fault either, right? Like, oh my God, Osric just ran into the middle of him again. Like
Right.
he's, oh my God, he's way up there now.
Right? I just healed you guys just to full. Can't you stay healed for just 5 minutes?
I've got to get clear
The
across the
classics,
map.
right? Death timer on one,
Yeah.
or two or whatever. You got to get there. You got to get there now.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and
give
let me,
yourself that quickness.
if you indulge me here too, let me just say this: Joe has a knack for making beloved characters, and I think there's a huge goal in doing that for players. Like you want to have that character that people love. One of the things that make you love characters, especially healers, is if they show up in the nick of time to get you before your death timer rolls out. So Joe's advice here is 1,000,000% on point.
Yeah, because and that's the fun thing with that healing touch. Because with the way the situation is going, like Alex said, it makes it more personal. Like you ran yourself out into danger as the healer, which there's a couple builds of healer that you can get where yeah, you're probably going to be right up front, but just that nature of Osric, he's way out there in the middle. These skellies are just piling in, and he's dropped. His death timer is down, and you rush in, taking that brunt, covering his body, healing him back to full, and just kind of soaking up some of that damage just for those moments. Like your table is going to love it. Like these are those moments that everybody cheers for when you rush up there and everybody's hanging on that dice. Are you going to cast your spell? I've got one hero coin. That means I got 2 shots to try this. Let's go.
Yep.
Like when the dice are hanging the whole table, those are the moments. And
Yep.
this is kind of a build that will help you get there.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. What else?
I think those are my 3 spells. Those are my starting bits. I mean, everything else just starts coming in at loot choice.
Okay.
I mean, I would definitely, definitely looking at some of those beautiful powers later on. Like there's that radiant power milestone for down the road. Single target healing spells now heal up to 3 targets. I might take that instead of looking for a new spell for my milestone. Like Holy Nova's cool, but you know what? I can target 3 people with this ability, and it's like a step up. It's like I just graduated.
I agree.
But I think that's my build for just like that classic healer. I'd probably give him like the mace kit or something. So yeah, when he hits, he can knock a little bit of a target off of a single enemy there.
Yeah, right.
Something along those lines. Maybe some mixed armor garb.
Epic. That's epic, man. I love it.
That'd be my healer.
That is awesome. All right. I want to talk about Master Graz.
Yes.
and sort of more of that monk style kind of man of faith. And um, Joe, this came straight from Master Edition, so I'm a little bit like kind of parroting you this time. But I don't think you can look at that art on the bottom of the page and not think maybe some sort of like Shaolin master,
Oh yeah,
almost, right?
is definitely very. He has that vibe of that monk, that top of the mountain peak, until
Right,
he's called.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
as we did it in your game, it like Master Graz like knew the old ways,
Yes.
right? He
Yes.
knew the old ways, and as a consequence, he had those abilities to heal people.
Hmm.
So, but he was also a bit of a kung fu fighter, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
But in terms of choices, starting ability, monk, use your wisdom stat when making unarmed attacks is what I
Yep.
took.
Yep.
Um, but
Big
then,
news for a healer.
but yes, huge. But then I went green staff also.
Hmm.
My starting spells were very similar to yours. Healing touch, for
Yep.
sure. Regeneration, which is create that tiny spark, give it to an
Yes.
ally. They
All
get the
right.
regen
That light.
D8. Yeah, and whether you envision as like a lotus blossom falling on somebody or a
Hmm.
little tiny mote, like Starfinder style, where it like kind of hovers around you and then
Yeah.
goes to that person. However you envision it, pretty epic ability. And then I went, fully Atom Palm, lift up and descend to create a seismic blast, ultimate to all who are near. So
Yes.
fully that. Um, and then in terms of like, where this character went later on, I went astral telepathy,
Yes.
almost like Doctor Strange style, which is awesome. I definitely took yogi stasis. So
Epic.
as long as he could like sit in that state, he was immune to harm. And if you remember, there was that great one where he was fighting Kilvastri,
Snake.
the snake in the water. He just
Hmm.
assumed that posture and sank to the bottom.
Yep.
you know?
Immune to harm, just in stasis at the bottom of a pool.
Yep. Um, let's see. And then, crazily enough, if you remember, I went to Vigilante City
Yep. I
for
was hoping this would come up because,
yes
woo,
for the kung fu piece, and took crushing attack, flurry of blows, and dim mock, the death
yes.
touch, just because that made a ton of sense for that character. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get too much into it, but instead of using stun, we developed sort of a key like kind of power system, right? Your
Yep.
key or your chi, however you think about it, that he could like spend points to activate those abilities in the moment. So,
Yep.
uh, that's my basic monk style healer. Again, the healing came in a very intimate way, one on
Hmm.
one, very close. In terms of gear, just simple traveler's garb, and that's it.
Yep. Yep. And I do have to say, for any GMs out there like watching this part, it is awesome to let your characters, the players at your table, let them explore into the other things in this book when they're looking for their milestones. It's like Alex with Master Graz. We went to Vigilante City and got some superpowers
Yep, and
that tailored in exactly to the build he was looking to make.
yeah,
So
and
A
I just
plus.
didn't. Yeah, and I just didn't do that, unilaterally. I
Mm-hmm.
approached Joe and said, "Hey, man,
Yep.
here's where I'm thinking in terms of Master Graz's direction. Like, what makes sense for him? Like, what do you think about this?" And Joe's so cool. He's just like, "Yeah, man, like that's epic. Like, let's
Right. I
roll."
dig
So,
it. I'm in. Let's do it.
yep, let's do it. So, all right, what else you got, man? We've covered sort of I think traditional holy man,
Yep.
sort of your traditional healer style.
Yep.
We've covered sort of monk. Do you have another example or two, Joe?
I actually do have another one, and I've got to go and look at another past character, Bulgar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Bulgar was great. He was essentially a healer, but the whole spin was a little different. We had him, or I had him listed in as a brawler and a quartermaster, so he knew about all the stockpiles and everything. But for that brawler aspect, I did actually go kind of based starting in priest, but I checked with Alex to switch down and take the which one was it? I know it's in here. Iron Fist, that your fists and feet are hardened and do weapon damage. I took that as my starting ability, cleared with Alex. So that's where I started at because he was a brawler. He's the type to get in a fight in the bar and he's probably gonna win. So like that was like the build for the character. He was a scrapper. He was like this gruff old dwarf. And then funny enough, my starting loot, I took the green staff, but I reskinned it as the green spoon. It was his great grandmother's old brewing spoon, and he'd use it for cooking and everything. And that's kind of like what imparted the magic.
Yeah.
For the healing stuff.
Let me interrupt just there. And I would say too, right? So that green staff, like that is such an epic item, and it makes total sense for a healer. Man, feel free to reskin that to like maybe it's your wooden cross.
Yeah.
Maybe it's this cool shield that you carry. Maybe it's just some other item. Like I played a priest once who his mace was an old candlestick, like he had taken from the church. Right.
Right.
You
Epic.
you could totally make that the green
Mhm.
staff or apply the green staff properties to an item like that makes sense
Yeah.
for your healer. It doesn't always have to be a stick, folks.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
Use
this wasn't something like he could accidentally use as a weapon. Like
right.
I'd be hitting someone with a spoon and they'd be like,
Right,
"What?"
exactly. But use your imagination like that. So like Joe doing that, like, hey, I want this to be his spoon.
hmm
Epic. Epic. Sorry, go
Great
ahead.
grandmother spoon. Oh, no worries, no worries. Yeah, and let's see, what did I take for that? I went straight into where is it? I know enchant is in here somewhere. You know what? That might have been the enchant might have been. Oh no, there it is. Yeah, enchant. Enchant was the first spell I took in my spoon because that lets me place a spell I know into an item, a one-use item. Now I think you're starting to catch where the food's coming in. So I have the enchant. Next, I took the healing touch and I took cleanse. Healing touch, we already know what that does. That gives them the thing. And this is stuff I'm imparting into my food. And cleanse lets you clear negative effects, curses, poisons, disease, anything like that. And
Yep.
So that was like the basis. Like, and I think those were the only, with the exception of one other I took later, Gathering Stone, which turned out to be epic. But those were the three spells I had for the entire game. Like that's where he sat. And so all the time I would make my spellcasting roll as he was scrounging through his bag. Oh, let me see. I think I've got some of that spicy cheese from Numenor. And he would pull this, on a successful cast. Oh, here it is. Eat that. And I'd hand it over to the players. And they'd be able to take their nub and get like just in, reinvigoration as their hit points kind of came back. But narratively it was the
Hmm.
food was just it was so good it was almost magical.
Well, and I would say too, is sort of that same archetype. You could use that if you decided that your healer was more of a potioner
Mhm.
type or even an
Indeed.
alchemist type. Like I think
Yeah.
that would lend itself. I mean, we may talk about some of those more advanced classes later, but I think that archetype would be on the right track for that type of character too, where you're
Yeah.
channeling your healing into an object. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. I mean, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like that was where he was built, and he was a healer, but he was more of a tosser. He'd get down and
Yeah.
dirty out there, and then throwing cheese or like a wineskin over, to somebody else.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
it was just always a little flavor, like that I would throw out. Oh, this was made with, the honey from the bees high in the mountains that feed on only thistle.
Oh, that was such a great game. Such a great
Yeah, it
game.
was always just fun little bits. I was just making crap up, right off the top. I mean, that game was amazing. But yeah, whew. So yeah, that's just another kind of take. Like that's even that style could really be kind of skinned into, maybe your paladin type even.
Yes.
Just take something from a fighter, takes from that warrior, take something from that priest, and haha,
Oh,
paladin.
absolutely. Hankrin has said this before in a video. I'm
Mhm.
going to sort of reiterate it again, which is I think if you're thinking of making a paladin, start with a priest and then go from there. Like,
Yeah.
don't make this sort of hulked up G.I. Joe, and then, who just also happens to have healing.
Mhm.
Start with being a man of faith and let that be sort of your driver. But I think paladins, Joe, are enough of a topic that I want to,
Separate.
yeah, let's dedicate even an episode to pallies because I
Yeah.
think I think you get into some cool stuff with those, and I think that class
Mhm.
is often misplayed and
Yep.
and a little bit misunderstood.
I
So,
think I think you might be right. I think you might be right.
but all right, So let's talk about freeform, a
Yes.
freeform magic and freeform healer.
Ah, yes. The realm of Vlass.
Yes, and ways to skin this, you can go a ton of different ways with this.
Hmm.
But for my lizard man shaman, like I envision more of a shamanistic type. There is sort of a shaman archetype in Ghost Mountain, but in terms of Vlass, I wanted to go completely outside the box with him. In fact, um, part of my part of my um, inspiration for Vlass was Patrick Rothfuss and his novels, and the magic in those was really awesome because in essence the lead character there sort of knew the name of the wind,
Hmm.
and if he spoke the name of the wind would obey him or change, or he could
Hmm.
change blood into fire or vice versa, or draw from these
Yep.
sort of things. So I asked my DM, I wanted to like Vlass wanted to commune with the spirit of a thing,
Hmm.
even Lightbringer style, right? And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a Fabrial in that book, and say, hey, like okay, you're composed of these atoms, fire, but I want you to turn into air,
Right.
or vice versa, or like in one scene there was a bad guy getting away, he was scaling a cliff, and I asked to have his stone hand holds turn into air, and the guy just dropped,
Yep.
it was that sort of thing. So commune with the spirits of all things and ask them to change. That was my starting ability. That's all I
Hmm.
wanted it to do. I had to make the wisdom roll, and if that happened, Vlass could kind of whisper the names of the spirits of things, these natural things, and they would obey.
And it was epic
And it was
every time the scene started, and and Alex was like, Vlast reaches out to the spirits. It was like, okay, what's happening now?
yeah,
Okay,
right.
I'm in. What's going on? It was always just
What?
vastly creative with that whole free form.
Well, yeah, because you had just sort of maximum creativity in terms of what you
Hmm.
wanted to do, right?
Yep.
Um, I took, believe it or not, as a starter reward, I took Healing Touch. I took the spell Healing Touch. Um, with that one. Later on, Vlask got some other things. So I went like full illusion with him, so he could create
Yep.
convincing illusions. That's out of the world's paths. If
Hmm.
you're looking for that, I went into things like consecrate from Ghost Mountain, where you mark the
Yes.
ground, and then in a circle, and evil can't enter that circle. I ultimately went with Osric's Bulwark, which is just create this massive stone wall, like,
Yes.
and in essence, like not only did Vlass have this free form, but I made a pact that he would do no direct damage dealing type
Yeah.
magic. So no fireballs, no lightning, none of that stuff. All of it was battlefield control stuff.
Hmm.
So protection circles, throw up walls, ask the spirits of things to change, create illusions. Ultimately, he had kind of a lockdown ability that I just sort of invented, kind of like the
Yep.
freeform magic, where he could levitate a single enemy and just hold them in the air for 1d4 rounds. He would
Right.
ask the air to harden around that person and just kind of hold them there.
Right. Make them a prison of their own.
Yep, exactly. That kind of stuff. Other than that, he had a wooden stick. He had a blowgun because he was sort
Hmm.
of a shaman. He had sort of a bone Chris dagger. Just basic kind of stuff, and that's sort of how I went with Vlass. And I would just say, in terms of that tradition or that freeform magic type character, man, the sky's the limit. Like,
Yep.
get
Yep.
excited and get creative and
And
do some cool stuff in the moment.
And the big key with that, going with that formless style magic, where you're not actually using full spells, you're kind of creating as you go. Um, it's important that you understand what your intention is for a spell, because that's what you're going to be working with during the game with your GM. You're going
Exactly.
to be like Alex said, you're going to phrase it where he was asking the spirits, and basically in that statement, he's saying, GM, this is what I would like to do. I'm asking the spirits if they can change the stone that he's hanging on to ledges of air. So I mean, that was a very like direct statement of what the intention was for the spell, what it was to do, and then we made our roll, or then he made his roll. So
Yeah,
I mean, just go wild with it. Like use that imagination. Just think, what would be an awesome thing I could ask for in this moment to cast this spell?
Right, like you don't have
Work
to take the
wonderfully.
cleanse spell, which I think would
Hmm.
be another awesome one for a traditional healer, when you could just ask the spirits of the poison to change the water into the blood.
Yeah, right.
Right, like that kind of stuff. So, okay, killer. Joe, you got any others?
I I think that's kind of like those classic approaches. I think we kind
I
of got
agree.
them in there.
I think those are the big ones. I've got
Hmm.
two maybe honorable mentions here on my list,
Okay.
and one of which is you could go straight old timer out of Ghost Mountain.
Yep.
So you can build that kind of hey, it's old Jeb. Everybody knows old Jeb. Jeb's the guy with the book. Maybe he's a little bit
Yep.
dogmatic in terms of his approach. Like that sort of he's kind of driven that way. Maybe even a little
Yeah.
bit religiously zealot. But in terms of that Ghost Mountain setting, man, you could play that type of healer in Alfheim or even in Warp Shell or wherever. So
Easily.
old timers a great one to look at in terms of like the Iron Cross, the Holy Water. That lends itself maybe to like vampire hunters, that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
So that would be great. The other one, Joe, you're gonna think I'm a little bit nuts here. Uh, but if you look at Warp Show and you look at the Echo,
Ooh, okay. Yep.
the Echo has an ability that says it can harvest energy from any source. Now, I think harvest is a very interesting word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another word might be drain.
Yep.
And and
This
and
is true.
and in my notes I wrote necromancer question mark.
Oh, man, pair that energy star with the blood skull from the mage or the master's skull.
Yes.
And I think potentially you have gone into the realm of necromancer,
Yes, exactly. That's what I think you could go.
right?
So,
And man, with some of the depending on your spell choices, like that could get really tasty.
yeah, exactly. So that's one that really struck me. I was like, ooh, like this could be a really fun way to sort of play.
Right.
Add in some things where you're raising skeletons. Again, work with your DM. But maybe you just touch things and you drain them, and then you can apply that energy to heal yourself or
Hmm.
somebody else. Like
Right.
you're withering other people. Like that's awful, but kind of fun.
Kind
So
of fun.
yeah,
Oh
so
yeah,
so
that could be pretty amazing.
yeah, or just go Echo. Like hey, you're an
Right.
Echo. You're this being in the cosmos. You like take energy from other things, and then you heal, apply it as healing energy to others.
Right. And necromancers get a bad rap. They are very good healers. They're just a little late sometimes.
That's
You
great.
know, they forgot to set their watch. That's all.
That's great. Well, Joe, any other thoughts about uh, priests or healers or playing that type of class?
Oh man, not really anything new to add. Just reaffirming. Have fun with it. Trust your teammates to do what they're going to be doing based on their classes, and just have fun navigating around that battlefield, keeping people on their feet, and don't forget you can still swing a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. Or our boy Xander, he's playing a brawler, kind of,
Yes.
kind of like your guy,
Right. Similar to Bulger.
Bulger. Yes, like Bulger. Uh, Xander's playing a brawler right now in our current game. A little bit different,
Mhm.
not ICRPG, but it totally works. Father Desmond. May
Right.
Timrin's light guide you. Ah.
Right. Half drunk all the
Right,
time.
he's
And
half drunk, and he's got these gloves, and when the gloves go on,
yep.
watch out, because Father Desmond's about to wade in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He hits like a brick house.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
something that we didn't cover, Joe,
Oh.
in terms of like other wisdom spells that I might consider taking,
Oh yeah.
for this type of character, because what we didn't talk about also is maybe a little bit of the battle type cleric.
That's true.
Again, I think that's more of a conversation in terms of paladins. But what if you wanted to take some offense type spells? Um, any of these elemental type spells, I think of the
Yeah.
classic D&D days where we couldn't wait till the healer could call down lightning and
Yes.
then get chain lightning. Like I think that's epic.
Yep.
So any of those sort of things, we didn't touch on. Um, it's actually in the int spell list, which I think is interesting. But destroy the dead.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think destroying the dead is a very classic healer type starting spell. If that's how you sort of envision it, I would
Yep.
definitely consider taking that. Um, we talked about healing Nova, Holy
Hmm.
Bulwark, invulnerability is an excellent one.
Yeah. Yep.
Where you can make one of your party members invulnerable for several rounds. The
Right.
2 rounds, that's epic. We talked about regeneration. Uh,
Right. The vine whip could be cool, although it does. I mean, it is awesome, but it kind of also could lean into like playing that druid, which I think probably cover
mhm.
some point later,
Yeah, down
unless.
the road. But yeah, I would totally do that. Like if you
Mhm.
envision like more of a naturalist type healer, absolutely. Even Wood Shaper, like I think you've used that
Yeah.
spell to great effect a time or two.
Yep.
Um, Gathering Stone, Balger had that spell.
Yes.
It saved the party's butt so many times.
None more than that one big one, which was
when
crazy.
when Durithrax was coming.
Right when suddenly realized, holy shit, that stone is still there.
Thank
Oh my
God!
god!
Thank
Say
God!
the rune, say the name. Woof.
Yes.
Oh man.
Um, I would be careful about Resurrection. Um, Again, back to this feels like a good idea, but I just don't know that Resurrection would be something that I would pick early on. I would probably
Yeah.
pick it way later in a game. But there's always
Mhm.
just something that feels kind of cheesy when characters are just like, we can cheat death at any time.
Right. Right.
You know,
Even
so
with its stipulations in the spell of have to be in a safe space, can't cast it during combat.
yeah, I would
There's
still be careful.
still, yeah,
Hmm.
still.
Yeah, about that choice. But hey, play the way you want to play. But Joe and I just come from um, Joe and I come from a background of creating humble men of faith. I think if you kind of make that your polar star in terms of your priests or healers or clergymen or however you think of them, I don't think you can go wrong. And then make it about taking care of your party, serving your party. I think you'll have a beloved character for sure.
Yep. Helping the local townsfolk.
Yes.
It's kind of a big one. Help the people.
May Timrin's light guide you. Okay, Father Desmond.
People, you're all of you being deceived.
I am Master Graz. Yep. All right. Well, that was a good behind the screen, Joe.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Well, there's nothing about there's something about a healer. I love them. I love them.
right. But I guess the next big step is where are you going to take? We've gone through. We've looked at some fighters. We've looked at some rogues. We've looked at some priests now. Don't worry, mages will be coming up later. We got more stuff coming. But we've looked at these building these different characters. What are they going to do?
Hmm.
Where are they going to go?
Yeah, and we've already given advice. We've already
Mhm.
said put players in peril. We've already said limit it to sort of the focus on the micro. We've already talked about this building blocks, but we haven't talked about encounter design.
All right, let's
Room
stack those blocks up.
design. That kind of stuff.
Room design.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I think it's time to go behind the screen.
That's right. I don't do the sound effects. The sound effects do the sound effects.
You're like boom,
Molly
boom,
man,
boom,
get on
boom,
it.
boom, boom. The drums. All right, we're behind the DM sheet now. We're out of the player chair. We're in the
Oh
DM
yeah.
seat, and we've got a night of play
Oh yeah.
ahead of us. And Joe, I tend to work backwards
Yep. Yep.
a lot.
I do know you like to look at where that finale moment is and build back.
Hmm. And
I am completely separate. I'm like, I got a title, Tomb of the Skeleton King. It's rounded dope.
yeah,
I'm always swinging it.
right. Well, so let's talk about that approach. So we've got the title. We decided we're going to do. We made a brand new healer, or so and so made a brand new healer in our group. We want them to take on the Tomb of the Skeleton King.
Yes.
Here's my approach. I start at the end, and the way consistent with my scene method and visioning scenes. the first thing that popped into my head was that epic moment. You're in the tomb of the Skeleton King. Like, it's elaborate. There are these columns that are supporting like a stone ceiling. And there are these braziers that are burning green flame, casting this sort of pallid glow across the whole space.
Acrid smoke, maybe.
Yep, and in the center of the dais, right? You see the sarcophagus lid, and it just and drops down. This big bony hand comes up, and then the spectral skeleton figure emerges, right? Only he's no ordinary skeleton. He's like 7 feet tall, and he's got a hand and a half sword that like can cut through stone. And then the booming voice like, "Who dares disturb my rest?"
Yes.
Roll initiative, right?
Yes.
That's what I see. And then if I kind of have that vision in my mind, like, yeah, I want players to take on that. Then I start working backward, like, oh, well, what leads up to that moment? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you're different.
Yep.
How do you go about Tomb of the Skeleton King?
Well, I have the name.
Now that
right?
I've tainted you.
Right. Well, I do have the name. I like to work from a title myself. So it's the Tomb of the Skeleton King. So that's kind of like already going to start informing my decisions. Like I'm thinking, okay, Skeleton King, there's going to be some issues with the dead being quite restless here. And Tomb, I'm already thinking, okay, this is either going to be like a barrow mound or something, or it's going to be dug into like a cliff face, depending on, was this Skeleton King, was he a good king? Was he a bad king? Because that's vastly going to change where the location of this tomb is. But it's kind of sounding like, I did get a little informed here by Alex. It kind of sounds like this is not a good king. So I'm thinking, like, my brain kind of starts thinking that Gandalf going to look in on the Nine, their prison, it was up that treacherous path, dug straight, like bored right into the side of a cliff face. They had to add the stairs. It was just slabs of stone. Like, so I'm thinking that's our Tomb of the Skeleton King. Like, in reverse of Alex, I'm looking at how do we get there? I'm starting at the top of the page coming down because I write in pen. I know my Lammy's downstairs, but so I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, okay, the antechamber is my first thing. Like, what is the first thing that these players see? And I might even add that entryway a little bit about coming up. Just to flavor things in, getting up to this spot, it was a bit tricky, but that first opening where it's just dark, they've got the light spilling in from the doorway here until they light a torch. Epic. And I'm kind of also thinking columns, but I'm thinking this antechamber just cuts straight back into blackness. You've got columns rising up, so there's going to be shadows casting around. I'm thinking dust dripping. I'm thinking sounds of things scurrying, just to kind of like set that mood, get players going like, oh, you hear another noise, maybe kind of get them like jumping a little bit, like starting to make them feel cautious is kind of where I'm looking at for that. Mm-hmm. And just like Alex here, I would be pretty much almost immediately calling for that roll for initiative, because the things in here know you are there and they know you are not supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. So I would already be, just in that, but just imagining that space, I think that's where I would be. And then I would start just from that room, figuring out what my challenge is and what my target numbers are going to be, what kind of enemies might be showing up.
Yeah.
Like I would already be starting to fill that in there.
Yes. So from my standpoint, right, for me, it's, I just think about the 3 T's. So now we've sort of come about sort of the start, maybe in 2 different ways. Like I picture the end, then I'm like, all right, what leads to the end? There's probably some sort of passage. And then at the beginning, there's probably some sort of antechamber that you walk into first, right? So then we're going to design the first space. Like, what does it look like? For you, that's the starting point. For me, I get there in a minute after I envision the end. Timers, threats, and treats. The 3 T's. That's sort of where I start, yes. Joe. What do you think? We did not pre-discuss this. We're just sort of riffing here. What do you think the first timer is? Or should we start with threats?
I could prove. I got nothing on the page yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think before I look at, what my timer might be, I do kind of look at, where's my target going to sit? And since I've already got that idea in my head that outside of the glow of that doorway, it's black. I mean, it's pitch black. There is no other light coming into this place by design. Um, I don't know whether it was punishment for those that have been laid to rest here that you are not allowed to see the sky anymore. I don't know. That'd be a pretty big punishment. But anyway, my first thought is with this darkness that I'm immediately going to set my target. First room out of the night, first time we've ever played these characters. I'm going to put it at 15, and it's going to scare the hell out of the players. And I'm not going to let them know this, but that 15, they can attack that target. I mean, you can always find a way to attack the target. But it's a little thing I like to do with torches. If somebody lights a torch, suddenly that dark, scary space isn't so dark. And I would drop that timer down to like a 12, like immediately.
Yeah, the target.
As soon as somebody says I'm lighting a torch or I'm lighting a lantern, some light source, I would give it to them. The only thing is I would leave it at a 15. If somebody was playing a Reptoid, they kind of got that heat vision. I might give them easy depending on what they're looking for. Like I would cite them if there's something living there, they would see the heat from it. But that doesn't mean that they can just, I can make out the detail of all these columns, because in the darkness in a tomb, everything's bloody cold, man. It's all going to be black.
Right. Right.
But if there's rats scurrying around, I would let them see those rats, those little heat patterns. I wouldn't tell them that they're rats. I would tell them, you see the unmistakable glow of heat, small things moving around in the darkness.
Yes.
And it's just way to flavor it. But I would go 15 target right off the top.
Oh, that's epic. Joe, you said something there that completely influenced my design, which is, I love it that these guys they're cursed never to see the sky, right?
Ooh.
Like I think that becomes a reveal. Like deeper in that antechamber, it's carved into the stone. Right, the inhabitants herein have been doomed never to see the sky again. Like, and maybe that also informs that there are some big, heavy doors that people have to push open.
Ooh,
just to even get in this chamber, or maybe even more foreboding, they get there and these massive doors were already cracked.
Oh yeah,
like that's bad,
right.
Right. Maybe it says that on the doors, and then they're broken open, right? So you add that foreboding to players, that foreshadowing. I agree. I might start with target. I might go the other way. I think what you're angling for is start high and work your way down, or maybe just keep it high the whole time. Hey, go nuts. I might go the other way. I might go 12, and over the course of the night, work up to the 15 with the Skeleton King as you go deeper into the thing. But either approach is great. So target. And then I'm going to probably consider, because I like everything to me is a trap, what's going to draw these players deeper into the space.
Yes.
And usually for my loot monkeys, that means treasure. So somewhere in the space, Joe, I envisioned it maybe as really messy.
Yeah.
Like, there's just stuff everywhere. Toppled goblets. There are huge mounds of cobwebs. They're going to think spiders, but it's not spiders.
Right.
And there are all these piles of stuff. Over here, there's stuff. Over there, there's stuff. Over there, there's stuff. And that's going to lead ultimately to my timer, which is in 1d4 rounds, things are going to rise up out of those piles.
Ooh. Yes.
Thoughts?
I dig it. I like it. Right. That's delicious. Ooh. What kind of things are rising out of these piles? Is it the dead within, or is it what disturbed this place? Is it the reason that these goblets and things are toppled over? Is it why the door is ajar?
I think that's a brilliant thought, but I think maybe for this, maybe to keep this simple, maybe for a beginning DM, we're just going to go straight skeletons.
Yes,
like we're going to go
my first spot.
through this. These are the damned who are here. Right. These skeletal warriors start to rise, and you realize these piles on the floor. Maybe they even pass a wisdom check, and they realize they're piles of bones. These piles of bones start standing up.
Yes.
And maybe if they've even gone in further, after some treasure that I've dangled at, deeper in the space as a treat, now they're surrounded in the space. So the question that I
Right.
have to ask, and I think a lot of people ask when they're first new to ICRPG, is how many skeleton warriors rise? Right? How
Right.
many enemies on encounter one, night one is the right number?
Right. I think that actually depends on how you're using the skeletons. Are these full one heart, 10 hit point skeletons? Or are they one hit point skeletons? That's vastly going to change whether or not I'm going to say 1d6 skeletons. When that timer expires, d6 skeletons start getting up every round
Yep.
until the bone piles are scattered. Or is it going to be 2d20 skeletons get up, or 2d12 skeletons
Yeah.
every single round?
Or
Because
maybe
if they're
they're
one hit point,
or maybe they have
oh,
half a heart, right? Maybe
yeah,
they're those weird claymation Clash of the Titans skeletons, right? Where you at
right,
least got to hack at them once before they
right,
drop, but then they still go down pretty easy with a big blow.
right. Well, that's
Maybe.
what I mean. With the one hit point, I would definitely skin it as, say that the player hits, he rolls his weapon effort, he gets 6, you just hack through and smash 6 skeletons.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
one that would like make them feel cool in that first moment of
Oh, it
like,
would.
the warrior rushing in and boom, and he just fells a row.
Yes.
Everybody's gonna be like, oh my God, yes. And let everybody do that. All this stuff is just gonna like sweep through and bleed into all the other enemies. That's if you're using like a one hit point.
Yep.
You know, give them D6 damage. So if they hit, players are gonna feel it, get a little nervous, but they can just hack through and cleave them, and
Oh yeah, I love it. So yeah,
just
in
make it a
your in your
hellstorm right
in
at the
your
beginning.
vision, Joe. Yeah, right. Like from the jump, they're taking on a wave of skeletons.
Right.
Yep, epic. All right, let's
But
go.
like you said, it would be on that timer. It would give them time to be enticed and move into the space. So they can't just immediately say, well, let's just go out and shut the door.
Right. Well, and I would say too, like that writing or whatever in the antechamber, like there's this
Mhm.
huge writing on the far wall, but it's in the shadow or whatever. So they got to get there to
Dim.
to read it, right? Um, that kind of stuff. I might also, in terms of a treat, Joe. We haven't talked about plot hook, but if you have a plot hook, somebody has access to space. You know, maybe it's the cobbler's boy. The cobbler's boy is missing, and
Yes.
then deeper in the room, you see like a shoe, right? Like
Yes.
I would put a clue. So in terms of a treat, there's going to be some clue for the night that's going to tell players they're on the right track and that they need to go sort of deeper into the space.
Yes.
Because I,
Ooh.
I want them deep in the space because then Joe's like 2d12 skeletons are going to pop up. Or I would say, by the way, to go the other way,
Mhm.
um, if you are deciding that you're going to use full 10 hit point, 1 heart skeletons, how many?
Right.
And to me, that depends on how many players you have.
Yep.
If you have 4 players, I would go as a general rule of thumb 4 or 5.
Yep. I'd go
Right?
with +1.
Yep.
Players +1 for
Yep.
myself.
Or let's say you're brand new and you're timid. You
Mhm.
don't want to kill them. 4 players, 4 skeletons, and then what you could do is you could have them do a die category less. So if the
Yep.
players are all doing kind of D6 damage, then all these skeletons have rusty swords that do D4,
Yep.
right? And again, back to letting them feel kind of epic
Mhm.
in the moment and not too roughed up in the first fight. Listen,
Yeah.
it's encounter one, scene
Mhm.
one, discrete space one. You have time. If that is too easy of a challenge, you can easily ramp it up in the next room.
Yep.
No problem.
Yep. And
Right?
you can always dial your challenge tuning in the moment.
Yeah, on the fly.
Oh, that
Absolutely.
right.
On
Oh,
the fly.
those first 2 skellies, that D6 damage, that was a little hefty. As a GM, you're noticing this, that like, oh, that got more dangerous than intended right off the bat. These other skeletons that are coming up next, the second wave, if they were, their stuff's not as good. Those 2 were champions.
Yep.
And maybe with those big guys, I'd look at that little note about, unless some specific thing is done, who knows what that is. Those 2 skeletons are reassembling in D4 rounds and standing back up.
Oh, that's epic. Oh, you know what? I love that mechanic. So let's say you do crush through a bunch of these dudes, right?
Right.
But then they reanimate, and now potentially they're being chased into the space. So now the exit
Ooh.
is blocked because the ones that they knocked down are now reanimating.
Right. They're
Love
getting
it.
back
Love
up.
it. But to Joe's point, that sort of challenge tuning, we're going to make challenge tuning a whole episode, but you can just take
Yeah.
that dial in the moment. Oh man, that was way too tough. for the next room, let me just dial
Hmm.
that dial back down and make this a little bit easier going forward.
Right. And the other thing, you never know what the players are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can give them their hooks and treats and things to like lure and pull them through your space, but you know you don't know what they're going to do. So make sure your space is also kind of good, like or at least something that they can use about it. Not necessarily like a full blown treat, but potential treats. Keep your eyes open
Well,
for it. Stay loose on your toes.
well, right. So
Like,
back to what you were saying, Joe, like columns, right? So I instantly
yeah,
envision like maybe they could knock one of these over if they had to. Maybe they
right.
can use them to hide behind, or they can sort of kite
Mhm.
these guys.
Exactly.
So
Kiting is always a good thing.
so that's epic. Like kind of let the map sort of speak to
Hmm.
itself, or your room description kind of speak for itself. If players come up with a creative way to use that space, man, let them use it to their advantage. So the environment becomes a treat.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Heck, maybe these skeletons they previously had woken up. Maybe they all came from alcoves in the walls, and that was the original source. Like, I mean, that is that important for the game or for the story? Maybe not. But while the fight's going on, maybe one of the players is like, "I want to peek inside one of those." Yeah, go for it, dude. Go ahead, let them roll. If they succeed, roll me a D100. Hit to
Mm-hmm.
the shabby loot table,
Yep.
toss something out because they're looking. Let there be something there if that roll succeeds.
Well, yeah.
Um,
That's it. And then so that leads to my next point, which is we've covered timer, we've covered threats.
mhm.
We've covered we haven't covered treats so much, but I would say consistent with our idea, there are going to be some piles around the room. Put some chests back there. Give them
Yeah.
some things to run towards, and if they
Mhm.
do manage to break away from the fight, to pop the lids on those chests, or like Joe said, if they're alcoves or anything where they could conceivably root around, reward them, give them a loot roll.
Right.
Especially if this is a one shot, man, let that loot just rain down on them.
Yes.
You
It's
know,
raining loot. Hallelujah. It's
two
raining loot.
two or three nice items every room almost.
Yep.
I would say.
Yep. But what about the time pressure, Alex? You're just gonna let them go and grab all three of these chests?
No, I'm not, because just like we talked about, these skeletons are going to re-rise in 1d4 rounds, and
Yep.
now they're being chased.
Yep. They're blocking the entrance, and now they're swelling towards you.
Yep.
Yep.
Now they have pressure.
Yep.
I
Better hurry
also
towards that door. But there's a sneaker on the floor. Man, maybe there's a whimper of a scared child that echoes from somewhere deeper inside. There's more of that pull. The reason we came in here, the cobbler's son.
yes. Well, and the other pieces too, right? You mentioned it tantalizingly. There's a door at the end of this space
Yeah.
that gives them a pressure relief valve. And
Yeah.
so if they can get there and they can get it blocked, hey, we're gonna have to worry about escape later. But for
Mm-hmm.
now, we can escape deeper into the chamber, which is what you want. You want them
Yes.
deeper into the
Yes.
chamber.
Come deeper inside my lair.
Yes, exactly. All right. I love that, Joe. Now,
All right.
the second
Ooh.
one we talked
Right.
about
They've
was,
made it through the door.
yep, we've talked about some sort of hallway, maybe.
Yes. The
And
crumbling hall.
yeah, and initially I envisioned it was sort of crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
What are
I
your
love it.
What are your thoughts there for
I
that space?
I love it. I mean, there's my little title. That's like my tagline to inform the space, the crumbling hallway.
Yep.
I am 100% going to have like, man, the stone in this area, when they built this thing into the side of the mountain, there must have been like a crack, just ever so slight, that went all the way to the surface somewhere way on the top of this mountain. And so a little bit over the eons that this fool has been down here, the water has been coming through. Maybe some roots had dug their way and got all the way in. So maybe there's a much larger split now. Maybe some of that ceiling has already caved in. And
Yes.
that's going to give, like, already I'm seeing some of my favorite obstacles, the uneven or unstable ground,
Mm-hmm.
that there's rubble in the path on this hallway. There's maybe spots where like the floor has begun sunking low because that water is like maybe eating away and calcifying that limestone. So the whole thing is literally uneven. Plus you've got these, maybe dangling roots coming in. You've got blocks of stone that you've got to navigate around in this
Yep.
long
Because
stretched hallway.
fallen from the ceiling, or part of the wall is caved in.
Yes.
Yes.
And I kind of think it's not a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
I think this corridor, just to break up that visual space, and little not that I'm a pro, but a little pro tip, um, break up that line of sight. They can't see around
Yes.
that corner or that next
Well,
corner. They
well,
don't know what's coming.
I was
It
gonna
also
say
forces them to move.
my thought was too, Joe. It's an L shape.
Yes.
So they get just a little piece, or maybe it's even like a broken T. So they come up the first part of it, and they get to the intersection, and to the left is completely caved in.
Yes.
Like who knows what was there, but if they go back that way, they might find a hidden chest as a treat.
Right.
But it's
Buried in the
very
rubble.
clear they got to make a right and
Mm-hmm.
go to the end. And I think Joe, I love that. I love the idea of the roots, the water kind of seeping in, the maybe the silt has poured in places and pooled on the floor. They're definitely rocks they got to move around. And I
Yes.
think Joe, I think this whole place is a trap.
Yes.
I think what's going to happen is if they make it to that T, so they make it to the intersection, they disturb it enough that the rocks start to fall. It's not
Yes.
on a timer. It just happens. The
When
note
they
in
get there.
the note in the journal is you make it to the T, or maybe you even go and you disturb the chest in the caved in section.
Oh,
Then the ceiling starts to come down. Right now, you roll the timer, and you got D4 rounds to make it
yes.
deeper, to make it to the other door.
Right. And you know what? Like, I think just on that note where you'd mentioned that chest, I would make that chest extra tantalizing. Yeah, I would certainly put like, I'd go like an epic loot. I'd let
Mm-hmm.
that be like an epic loot roll. But you only catch the glinting of the corner of this chest. You're going to have to like do some work,
Dig
whether
for it.
intelligence or strength. I would go either of
Yep.
those, like to think about how you're pulling these stones. And you got to give me a heart of effort to unbury this thing. And that's the act that causes everything to tumble.
Yes. That's
Yep.
perfect. Well, and what I would do too is, in the previous room in the antechamber, it's all like rotting wooden chests. Here, this is like gold and silver filigree. Like
Yeah,
this chest
exactly.
looks schmancy.
Right. And put some stuff in it because as soon as they make that roll and move that first stone, as soon as it happens, that effort comes, roll that D4. Now you've got that timer going on. You
Yes.
know, you can't run back because there's a host of skeletons blocking the way.
Yeah,
And going the other direction, the
and they
cobbler's boy is there somewhere.
yeah, they keep reanimating.
Yep.
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 Yeah, and maybe now you also hear the first cry of help,
There we go. There we go.
right? No! Like he wakes up. No! Right?
Yes.
Epic. All right. The other thing I would do here, Joe, because the ceiling itself is a threat
Mm-hmm.
with the rocks falling. So I think every round it's dex or defense,
Yes.
or you take damage. It doesn't have to be a lot. At this point, you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to wear them down before the final fight. So like D6,
Yep.
but you fail a save, you take D6 damage as the stones are coming down.
Yes.
I think the door at the other end is locked. I think you got to pick it or break it down with a heart of effort to get through while you're in the murder cave, while you're in the murder hallway. And I think here, Joe, I think I would also put an enemy or two.
Ooh.
And I think I would change it up. And I think here it's skeletal dogs.
Ooh, nice. Nice. The hounds of the master.
Yes, guarding the antechamber. So now you've got these two huge skeletal dogs that you have
Right.
to deal with. And maybe that's also what helps bring the ceiling down is that you round that
Yeah.
corner, you've got chest on one side, you've got terrible enemies on the other, and
You
but
know, at first I think I would have those enemies, looking like, mummified, they've got the decorative stuff on them, maybe even they even have like some shrouded hood that was forged for them. And they're kind of propped up and sitting either side of the door.
oh nice. Yeah, that's epic.
And I think getting to that T is when they start to rouse. Or maybe they're guarding the door. Maybe when someone touches the door or touches the chest, that's when they animate
Yep.
because you're not supposed to be touching those.
Yes. And so now in effect what we've done is we've created a trap.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a trap, the ceiling is crumbling. Their goal is on the other end of the door, but oh god, epic loot chest to the left.
Yeah.
To the right, they've got to get past these now animated enemies and somehow get through the door.
Yeah.
Behind them, horde of reanimating skeletons that just don't stop.
Yep. Yep. And how hairy you want to get with this could get pretty bad if
Yep.
the skeletons start breaking through the door.
Yep. The last thing we haven't talked about is target. Like, what target would you go for here? Here, there's so much going on. I would probably go 12.
Right. Right. I would still, I would be under the assumption that they've already lit up a light source. I would maintain that 12 as long as that light's there.
Yep. 12.
If they have to drop the torch, or if it for some reason goes out, we've got water in here. Mm-hmm. If somebody gets knocked down, I'm going to assume their torch has fallen into one of these puddles and has gone out. Target's 15.
That's it. Yeah.
Unless somebody else has another light. If there's another party carrying a light or another person, still 12.
Yeah, you got Gandalf with the staff. Yeah, no problem. Yep, well, and I would just say, and just note here too, these skeletal dogs are not hugely threatening enemies.
Yeah.
Just like the stones, they're designed to kind of whittle the players down. Mm-hmm. They're designed to slow them down and antagonize them, and give them something to kind of work against before they get to the final room.
Yeah, and these skeletons, these skeletal dogs, I would just use all flat rolls. I wouldn't have any bonus on them at all. They'd roll a flat d20 to hit. They'd roll flat damage. This is not the time to tune yet.
Yep.
Because you don't want these to feel super challenging, and then when they get to the boss, it's just like dink dink.
Yeah, ho hum.
Oh, yeah. Save your points for later.
Yeah, you don't want those guys to be the star of the show. Like you want to make them challenging, but they're not the star yet.
Yep.
Flat
rolls are just fine.
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about these first two rooms. Okay, antechamber done, crumbling hallway done, and this tomb of the Skeleton King, and the damned are here with him. And then they get through the door. They either break it down, they set it on fire somehow and burst through, they pick the lock, whatever mechanism they come up with to shine, they use magic to phase through or whatever. They get through the door, and now they're in the tomb of the Skeleton King.
And we already know what this room looks like.
Yeah, so much bigger chamber.
We planned ahead, so we don't have to do anything right now.
If you use my method, you already kind of have a sense. Much grander scale here.
Yes.
Right? Again with the columns. Again, I think, like Joe, there are niches on the side where there's loot. Okay, they're not going to have time to raid these chests because it's that comes at the end. It's going to about to get nuts. Right, but treats along the wall if they can get to them. On the dais, right? We've carried this whimpering boy.
Yes,
he's just woken up. Right, we don't know why he's there. Maybe he just, he's one of those kids. His parents told him not to go in the cave. He went in the cave.
Right,
like why'd he do that? Right.
Kids do that. Hell, I'm an adult. I'll still do that.
Right?
Hey, look at that cave. I'm going to go crawl in.
Right. So, Skeleton King rises, and much to everyone's horror, he's 7 feet.
Yes.
And he's got a massive blade. Like, it's long. The reach on this thing is crazy. Like, maybe he hits up to near.
Yeah.
Maybe
even he hits everybody that's near.
Everybody that's near.
Right.
In a wide arc, and it does D12. This dude, and I would just say, if you've got 4 players, I might go 2 hearts, 3 hearts. If you've got 5 or 6 players, probably maybe 5 hearts for this guy.
Right.
But I would make this dude move through the space. Yes. That would be a key here. This can't become tank and spank.
Mm-hmm. He
has to move through the space. And the columns, in terms of that sweeping attack, offer no refuge because he cleaves right through them.
And because remember, the blade cuts through stone.
Yes. And as he does, the room becomes more unstable. And I think, 3 of those things go down, 2 of them go down, and the stones start falling again.
Right. Better protect that kid.
He's still up
there whimpering.
Yep.
Right.
The other thing that I would say, maybe on a D4 timer after the Skeleton King rises and he's rampaging his way through, or maybe even at a certain point, if he goes down to a certain health level, he calls his vanguard, who are buried with him. And, depending on the number of players, it might be the Elite 4, it might be the Elite 8. It just depends. right? On your night of play. But let's just say he calls the Elite Four
Mm-hmm.
and they all start coming in from the sides.
That would be tasty. I would actually suggest an alternate.
Ooh. Yeah.
I love the fact that he's got his backup, like his ride or die homies show
Yeah,
up and they're
right.
like, yo.
Yo.
Or we've already got these braziers burning with this sickly green flames, kind of like this acrid smoke. He gets down to a certain bit of oomph. Well, the Skeleton King ain't no slouch. With a quick wave of his hand, those braziers burn up even brighter, and that acrid smoke starts getting awfully thick.
Ooh.
Start making me some con rolls. Like, this stuff is kind of toxic. Thankfully, the boy, he's cowered. He's low to the ground. Safe to breathe.
That's the key.
So let your players know that. Do not hide that info. The boy is safe down low, laying on the ground. So that potentially they could have something to work with there. Yeah. But in the meantime, roll me that con check, and if you fail, you're taking 1 point of damage immediately. Every single round.
The other way I might go too, Joe, is the braziers. The braziers are the source of this guy's power.
Ooh, a little dun, 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 Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, and every time he takes damage, you just see one of the braziers flash and the flame grows higher, like you're talking about.
Yes.
And he doesn't look phased. And then you realize, oh God, to take him out, we gotta smash these first. That. Right?
I love that.
While the ceiling is coming down, while the four are closing in. The other thing I might do is maybe instead of chests, maybe the players just see these four are carrying glowing magical weapons, they each have a piece of glowing magical gear. So then it's kind of cool, because then if you take one of them down, then you
claim
get some
your prize.
You claim your prize. Yeah. So there's your big treat.
Yes. Oh man.
So now they have a choice too, right? Do we want to focus fire on the big guy, or should we take these guys out or whittling us down? You still got to protect the kid because he's vulnerable, and you definitely want to threaten him every chance you get, right?
Every chance you get.
Every chance you get.
Because that moral imperative.
Moral imperative, yeah. I mean, I would be surprised if the kids were just like, "No, let's just let him get caved in with that guy," and then they ran. Like I don't,
right?
I don't think heroes do that.
Yeah, your players aren't going to let this poor kid, this cobbler's son, no matter how he ended up there, they're not just going to let him kick off. I mean, come on.
And if they do, then the consequences have to be dire. Like he shows back up as like a dark paladin under the thrall of the Skeleton King. That has to be like a really bad consequence, like 3 sessions in, right?
Right. When the cobbler's son shows back up, dark armor, green burning from his eyes. You left me to die.
Right.
Now you shall join me.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Oh yeah. That could work.
You have what it takes to be part of the Skeleton King's army.
Right.
Now that we've been released on the world.
Right.
So that'd be epic. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about this. We talked about target. Again, it might be, if you're ramping up over the course of the night, you might be at a 14 or a 15 here. They might find a way to reduce that if they knock the braziers out, and that slowly drops the target.
That could definitely work.
Yeah.
Well, I think depending on how you use that acrid smoke, I mean, it's either doing 1 damage or maybe it's just everything is hard.
Yeah.
Smoke is choking. It's burning your eyes as you're moving through. It might not even have to do damage. Just making a hard roll.
Yes.
Could be brutal. You've got light from these things. So not worry about darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Or even every round, you just make a con save, and if you fail, you take 1 point of damage. And everybody makes it at the start of the DM's turn. Make your con save. Oh God, I don't want to fail this. I'm running out of hit points.
Right, I'm getting close to making a plan.
Yep, that kind of stuff. You might put some chests out there if players are struggling. Maybe you've got some healing items in there.
Right.
Those are about the only finishing touches, I would say.
On that treat note, for a little bit of healing stuff, it could even be that knocking one of these braziers over, roll a d4 and recover that much.
Oh, it
knocking one of these out, the floof of like clean air that has just suddenly surrounded you. Who
yeah,
knows?
it restores it. Yeah, awesome.
Right? A little
Or
restoration to the guy that kicked it over,
yeah, or
puts it out.
and maybe even a terrible thing might be a failure state, which is that if enough of the ceiling collapses,
Oh,
and this
right.
guy does get to see the sky,
Oh,
then like he just takes off into the world.
oh man. Okay. All right. Hold on. I just, woo.
Right?
I
Like,
don't know if this is something you would need to write into the encounter. Maybe just like a little side note. He wants to see the sky. He wants to get these players the hell out of his way because he is going through that door, down that corridor, and out the front door.
mhm.
This fight might have become dynamic and is now going to potentially take place over all of these rooms we've just got. He's going to wreck them here and
Yep.
he's going to leave.
Yeah.
Now you're racing like, okay, we saved the kid, but what the hell happens if he can see the sky?
Right.
Like there could be some whole man. All right,
Well, and
that might be a whole other episode right now.
right, and if he's moving at all, maybe he's even like telegraphing it, like Vanguard to me. I must see
Oh,
the sky. Like, and he starts to like make his way there. So he's maybe he even telegraphs it, and he says, Vanguard to me. Like, I must see the sky, and they all
right.
form a line to deal with the party, and he starts heading out.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That could be great.
Although
If he can see the sky, he will bring down the sun. Who knows?
well, and maybe if the other hallway caved in, maybe he just starts climbing up out. His path is
Oh,
clear,
yeah.
just one room. He starts climbing out, and then maybe the fight finishes in a town or something. Like, you don't know,
Right.
but that could be the end or the start of an epic campaign. So there's a failure state. I think you got to plan. What happens if the players all die? I think if they're first level and it's a complete wipe, I think they wake up back in town, like some other adventurers came after them. I know it's a little bit cheesy, but maybe you do that. But now the Skeleton King is now a menace on the land, right?
Or if I mean the other potential, if it's a TPK and everybody loves their characters, like as a GM, you've got the power. Like Alex said, they wake up back in town in a cold sweat in their own homes as they have just been given a vision of the future. And hell, go just like the movie Boss Level. Let them go in. Maybe don't even make it as difficult. Throw some other challenges, but run the exact same thing all over again with them having the knowledge of exactly what is going to happen. And I don't know, maybe see how that plays out. They know that those skeletons are about to get up. They know what that timer is. They know what that loot is. They've already seen it. Let them go through with that knowledge. That could be a hell of a time. It might run in 30 minutes pushing through there because they know they've seen it. Who knows?
Epic. Well, Joe, I think Tomb of the Skeleton King is pretty fleshed out. I think we've given players a ton of fun stuff to chew on. I love that. I love that adventure. It's folks, you saw it here first. Go run it. Tell us how you did. Put it in the comments.
Right.
We didn't talk about hooks though. So
Yep.
we kind of alluded to it. The cobbler's son is missing. I think maybe you start out in the tavern or you start out in town or you're at the edge of town. Somebody rushes up like, my boy, he's missing.
Yep.
That sort of thing. I saw him go into the forbidden place.
Yeah.
He was last seen near the cliffs. That sort of stuff. And and then put him right on the edge of that antechamber.
Right. Or another hook. Man, go straight up Goonies. Everybody knows the legends of the old king. Everybody knows the legends. And holy crap, man, Alex, you just woke up this morning and as you were, your priest here, you were doing some work in the home, with your family and everything. And damn, where'd this old map come from that fell out of my grandpa's old chest? And
Right.
You've got a map that leads directly there, and it might even have something about, specifically like an item you're going to find in there, like the gem on the king's crown, or even, his chalice everlasting. And it might not even do something that cool. It could have just been a name, but you could give them a map detailing exactly where to
Yeah.
go. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can hook it.
Yeah, like that item is in the sarcophagus that he comes out of, right? Like if they take the time to
Yeah.
look in there, it's some like epic piece of
Yeah.
loot. Yeah, absolutely.
You know? But
Um,
that one is less mortal in peril. Like you
right,
want those innocents in peril. We've talked about peril already,
peril,
and
but
we know.
but you could appeal. You're right to treasure hunting.
Yep.
You could just appeal to because we baked a ton of wonder into this place, and I think players think for wonder you got to have travel. Holy smokes, the wonder in this place, that antechamber, the crumbling
Mhm.
hallway, the tomb itself, so much wonder in a place like that that players might want to explore. Maybe you allude to it like, hey, on the edge of town, like there's this place. Maybe the skeletons are already pouring out.
Yeah.
So the farmers in the area are saying they've seen strange bony things at night. Like
Yes.
that kind of
Yes.
stuff to hook that sense of intrigue. Um, or maybe it's
Oh.
just flat. This kid went missing. He was last seen
Mhm.
this way, and then you just go for it. So
Yep. Yep.
those are my thoughts. Joe, you got any
Exactly.
others?
Yeah, no, I mean those are all great, and I mean you mentioned about these the wonder that has to have travel. Maybe it doesn't, like you were saying. Maybe if you're standing in an old Farmer Johnson's field, and it's not a foggy day, it's a clear day. Everybody knows those cliffs. You can see them from town, but from Farmer Johnson's field, looking up with no fog, you can actually see the doorway. And wait a minute, is that open? I mean, it could be
Right.
as simple as that. It's like a walk in the afternoon. You spend an hour walking there because you can see it from town.
Yeah.
Nobody goes there because it's evil.
Yeah. Or
Why is
or
the door open?
or it's the portent on the waning days of the summer solstice of the 600th year. The the doors to the evil place will open. Like yeah, like
Yeah,
that sort of stuff, right?
right.
Yeah.
Oh man, you could put all kinds of stuff.
Or
We must leave our sacrifice. This is the 100th year. We must send somebody up there, or our fields will rot.
yeah. Or you
Ain't
know
nobody
what?
got time for that. Hooey, we're gonna go save that kid because y'all are fools.
Or you know what? You don't want to fool around. Just start. Just start right in the middle. Like players are walking along in a field, and boom, sinkhole, and they're in the antechamber.
Yeah,
Now you got to find some rope.
yeah. I bet you there's some farther in. There's that Gordian knot locking the door up ahead.
Yeah.
You
Right.
better not cut it.
Right.
You're gonna need all that rope.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, tons of ways to get players into this adventure and send them on their way and propel them towards greatness. And then what does the end look like? I don't know. What is the whole truth? The whole truth is the Skeleton King and his evil band were locked in here many years ago, probably for a good reason because they are not a good force on the land. And if the evil gets let out, it's going to be bad. It's going to have consequences for later. We definitely want to save this boy who's wandered in there somehow, gotten in there somehow.
Yep.
And then ultimately, depending on the outcome, this potentially becomes the start of an adventure, right?
Yeah.
You take this one shot, you use these same characters down the road. Maybe they vanquish the Skeleton King, but now there's an even bigger threat, or that sets off a chain reaction, or maybe the Skeleton
Right.
King escapes. However, like it's going to create some awesome night to play for everyone. And man, that's friggin' ultimate right there, Joe.
Boom.
See what I did there?
Right? I like that. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to belabor the point. I think I just say to everyone, thank you so much for joining us
Yes.
for another episode of the Ultimate Effort show. I hope our character creation for Priest has been awesome. I hope you hit us up with some comments and descriptions. Kane, we're looking at you to put one in the comments. And then behind the sheet, thanks so much for joining us for our encounter design. Maybe one day we'll get this typed up and floated out there for folks. But in the meantime,
That's what I was thinking.
I think you've got enough here to either parody it or riff on it and do your own Tomb of the Skeleton King. We'd love to hear about your experience if you run this. And man, everyone, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Joe?
And in the meantime, wherever you go, take my hero coin and always roll ultimate effort. Bam, 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 bam.